Middle East, Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Our second guest is Brother Abbas Lokat. Abbas is known as Mr. PT. He's our personal trainer. He's a level 4 qualified personal trainer, works with people from all walks of life. Having 12 years of industry experience, Abbas works with clients to help them achieve their goals and to enable them to understand the importance of exercise. Having lived and breathed sports and exercise all his life, Abbas has a passion for perfection and a drive for success. Being very competitive, Abbas thrives on winning and overcoming any obstacles in life. With a commitment to mind, body, and soul ethos, Abbas focuses on a holistic approach to fitness and pushes the mindset to all that benefits from his knowledge. After deciding 3 years ago to focus on coaching as a full-time career, Abbas has successfully transformed many people's lives and continues to push everyone around him to also realize the benefits of fitness and exercise. So inshallah, we hope to get some good insight from him regarding the physical aspects. Next, we have Brother Safraz Jairaj, who is a psychologist. Dr. Safraz Jairaj is a clinical psychologist working with patients suffering from depression and anxiety disorders in the NHS. He is also a senior teacher fellow at the University of Surrey in the Department of Psychology. He is also the lead for capacity building at COEG, which offers mental health first aid training and is engaged with well-being related workshops. Last but not least, we have Sister Munzala Raza, who is a doctor and Islamic teacher, currently a fourth-year student at the Al-Mahdi Institute in Birmingham and doing an MA in Islamic Studies at the University of Birmingham. Previous background in medicine and community projects include ICBL, which is Islamic Case-Based Learning, which is an alternative to instructive teaching. Can we welcome all our guests and panelists with a loud salawat? So I think I'm going to start off with asking questions. There will be an opportunity during the second half for the floor to ask questions. So if I can kick off with Sheikh. As Shia Muslims, what can we take from Bibi Zainab and Imam Sajjad's journey and apply it in this day and age to help keep it together?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I was praying that I won't be the first. But my dua, as I said in the majlis, may not be answered. Anyway, first of all, thank you so much to the management, and especially to Brother Samir, our President Sahib, for arranging this particular discussion. Very important discussion, combining three absolutely pivotal areas in our lives. Many a times people look at me and they say, our solution in life is if our souls are healthy. My response is, if you don't look after your mind and your body, forget it. Because if you look at some of our ulama and maraji' today, subhanallah, 80, 90, they're very, they've looked after their health, their diet, their mental well-being. It's not only about purification of the soul. We are told that the body, of course, is the carrier of the soul. And, philosophers have talked about the connection. The connection is deep in the idea that if you don't pay attention to some aspects, important aspects of your body, then there is no hope to progress in as far as your soul is concerned. Now, regarding the question, and I do realize it's quite late, so we might have to, limit the answers to short. And so I would like to hear more from you, and I would like to benefit from the panel very much so. So please, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask the other members of the panel. Okay. Okay. And I will be here to answer as well if there is anything, but I am particularly looking forward to hearing more about, diet and, a healthy mind as well. So very briefly, now we are in the month of Muharram and Safar. We remember the sacrifice of the Ahl al-Bayt. Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Zainab Abidin alayhi salam have a very interesting role in our lives, because very much the aftermath of Muharram is related to what they did. I feel that one of the most powerful spiritual and mindful, so to speak, individuals in the history of Ahl al-Bayt who was given this opportunity was Imam Zain al-Abidin. The reason is, the dua literature. Many a times we look at dua and we think it's the way to speak to Allah. But if you examine and ponder over the words of Imam Zain al-Abidin, it was actually very much healing. And it's for the well-being of the individual. Sometimes when you reflect of what he says in Dua Abu Hamza, for instance, or in Sahif al-Sajjadiyya, or the Munajats, the way he communicates. I was discussing this with a psychiatric and person who's telling me that they have benefited a lot from certain parts of the Dua of Imam Zain al-Abidin for, personal reflection and to put things in perspective. Many a times we get lost. There were so many ideas, so many thoughts, so many worries. And what Imam alayhi salam does is breaks down our concerns and anxieties into different compartments. So for example, if you look at his munajats, you have munajat for those who are sinners, munajat who are those who want to speak to Allah, munajat for those who want to be grateful to Allah. Then you've got situations where he talks about the parents, the son. You have a munajat for istikhara, which has been misunderstood by 90% of the Shia world. And other areas, so it's kind of tailor-made. What is it that you need? What is it that you are going through? What kind of challenges are you going through? There is no evidence in history that Sayyidah Zainab went through any form of mental disorder. Somebody was telling me, someone who sees, and obviously Dr. Safraz I work with a lot, he'll be able to tell us more. Those who see trauma, who witness others being murdered, they see crimes committed before their own eyes. Usually, they may be susceptible to, a lot of, other issues or mental health disorders, maybe, or, aspects that impact their lives going forward. It seems that they both handled it in different ways, but both successfully. Sayyidah Zainab, one of her main ways I feel that she handled what she witnessed is when she spoke about it and she communicated it and she encouraged others to do so, holding majalis, discussions, and also taking responsibility. So she was kind of in charge to make sure everything falls into place. But at the same time, I think the power of Iman and faith was something that both enjoyed very much. On that Sham Ghariba, she would stay the night worshipping despite what she saw, right? Imam Zain al-Abidin, du'as, risalatul huquq. Each and every one of them, I think, what we need to do? This is not for an 11 o'clock discussion, but this is the idea that I would like to throw. And I've discussed this with Dr. Abbas Tijani, who is here in Leicester, and others who have this interest. I said, what we need to do? We need to look at Sahif al-Sajjadiyya and the works of the Imams from a different lens, in that how does it help self-development? How many books do we have where they've looked at, the self-development that you see out there, all the skill sets that we need? How many have looked at the Quran and these supplications have said, look, you know what? This is what it's saying. This is what it's saying. This is the features, the characteristics, the qualities we need to develop within ourselves. Yes? So I feel that that is something we need to definitely develop, encourage. Final point I'd say is the Ahl al-Bayt alayhum as-salam, without a shadow of a doubt, were individuals who recognized that a successful life and a successful akhirah means a balance towards health of the mind, body, and soul. So, we are told, did you know that Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Holy Prophet used to joke with each other? Yes. They used to joke. Shall I give you some of their jokes? Is it appropriate? Ask Maulana, please. Yeah. All right. And just as an example of how the Prophet and the Imam, for example, the Prophet once was sitting and eating dates with Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. and the dates he would eat, he would put the seeds in front of Imam Ali. After a while, Imam Ali alayhi salam had a pile up of seeds and the Prophet had nothing in front of him. So Imam looks at the Prophet smiles and said, "Oh Ali, you certainly eat so much dates." Imam looked at the Prophet and said, "Ya Rasulullah, at least when I eat them, I don't eat the seeds as well." Yes? The Prophet, this smile, the Prophet says, "Al-tabassumu hasana." To smile is a hasana, you get thawab. Yes? One of my teachers in Najaf said, the only halal makeup for ladies and for gents is a smile in public. It's okay to smile. It's not a problem. So in many ways, they understood that a successful life with me, and look at their diet and the recommendations today we have from the A'imma about what you should eat and what you should not eat. I made a video a few months ago about 10 recommended foods from the Ahl al-Bayt. And people loved it. People were like, wow, we didn't know that the Imam said, eat this, don't eat too much of this, meat, that, the other. We thought they just focus on ibadah, on some of the spiritual lessons. But no, there is books such as Tibbul A'imma and everything, and in danger of contradicting myself for taking too long. But just as a reminder that, you know what, let's balance and let's invest time into our healthy mind and healthy bodies. And I suspect that you're all here because you want to do that. And inshallah, it will be a good springboard going forward.
Ahsan, thank you very much. Just a quick note, we can accept messages. If there's anyone that wants to send a message, you can send it to, I don't know whether the number's promoted on screen, but it's 07958 450 191. Just once again, 07958 450 191. Feel free to send any messages and inshallah we'll try and get to it. I just want to continue on something else that Sheikh said earlier on the mimbar. The famous quote by Bibi Zainab, "I see nothing but beauty." This was in response to Ibn Ziyad's question, how did you find the way Allah treated your brother and your family? To me, it basically feels like Bibi Zainab was so well composed. She obviously knew exactly what she was saying, what she was doing. I want to hand it over to Sister Munzila for an analysis or any feedback on that famous quote.
Assalamu alaikum. My apologies, I've kind of lost my voice a bit, so I'll sound a bit strange. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It's an absolute honor. Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, or euphoric or ecstatic expressions like that, you hear them from the Ahl al-Bayt a lot. You can give the example of Imam al-Husayn as he's being hacked to death. He's expressing these sort of mind-boggling statements of Tawheed, which don't make immediate sense to people like us because we haven't reached that level. So they are common, but the question is, why? Why do they speak like that? And what does it signify? To me, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila is hinting at a particular deep disposition that she has, a malika, a khuluq, some kind of thing that she has that is allowing her to express or have that sort of effortless, not even effortless, but unconscious reaction, which then manifests as Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, that kind of ecstatic euphoria. I see that. So for me, it is a deep disposition in her. When we talk about disposition, we're talking about virtues, acquisition of virtues. Acquisition of virtues here for her would be patience, gratitude, a degree of God consciousness, taqwa, that is so profound that allows her to survive, but not just survive, actually thrive in moments of such extreme stress. One thing that we don't do justice with Sayyidah Zainab is we mention her patience in tragedy, but actually she would have always been like that even prior to the tragedy. There's a lovely book that Sheikha Nazmina and Dr. Amina Inlows have translated. I think it's Mahasin al-Akhlaq or something like that. Sheikh Ali will correct me. Its Spiritual Secrets or Ethical Mysteries, something like that. And in the section on patience, it's Mohsin Faith al-Kashani's book. In the section on patience, he talks about patience in good times and adversity alike. And he gives the example of a hungry person and says that sometimes it's easier for a hungry person to go without food than if he has a banquet of food in front of him and resist it. So he talks about this notion of patience in obedience and then patience in adversity. She would have been like that prior to Karbala as well. So you have to acknowledge that her patience has also developed in degrees and become and achieve such a stage that she can then say, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. Ma ra'aytu illa jamila is the culmination, the consequence, the end of a sublime sort of journey of acquisition of virtues. If you try and emulate just Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, it will be very ineffectual unless you also mimic or emulate the underlying process of changing or acquiring good virtues. And that's the whole game anyway. I mean, game's probably not the right word. The Prophet said, or is reported to have said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ أُتَمِّمُ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I've been sent to perfect virtues and morals. That is the whole journey, the entire purpose, the entire maqsad. You come into a lowly life and then you go back to Him. You can't go back the same. You either go, you will have to change, either you do so kicking and screaming, or you then make a choice that I would like to actually acquire some good virtues along the way. So I think this statement is referring to a journey, a deep disposition that she has acquired in good times that has allowed her in a time of stress, grief is adversity, a time of stress, to then articulate that. One step before that, that comes even before this notion of, okay, if I say to you acquire patience, what does that even mean? You have to have a very, very deep understanding of who you are, what you lack, what you need, what are your problems. And this is where the hadith, مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. True recognition of what you are is recognizing your Lord. In practical terms, that means that you devote a certain portion of your day to contemplation and reflection on muhasibah. And that's very well rooted in hadith and Quran too. And in that, you need the help of God actually more than anything. أُدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. You have to have His help to remember what you've done in order to fix it. In order to know what virtue to acquire, you need to know what you lack. So the journey to be able to even get close to expressing what she has expressed in times of stress starts with a degree of self-reflection and contemplation of what you lack. Confront the uncomfortable reality that is you. And then try to, acquiring virtues and removing vices are like the same coin, you flip it. Acquiring virtues are refraining from vices. So in order for you to know which one to adorn yourself with, you have to have a good understanding of who you are. We have a hadith from the Prophet who's reported to have said that all the sins are locked in a room and the key to the door is lying. Sometimes we do one thing that we have no concept of the effect it has on everything else, that it's a door to other things you do, and that will be individual for everyone. So once you reflect, once you have a real conversation, and for that, like Sheikh Ali said, you need mindfulness. You need to live in the present, not in the past, not in the future, right now, and then know what you need to fix, and then you acquire those virtues. The other point, before I pass back, is we have this notion that Sayyidah Zainab was really strong, and she had a lot of resolve, but she went through a lot of grief. All the Ahl al-Bayt did. Imam Ali did. When he, just today I was listening to a Jummah khutbah by a colleague at the Hawza, and he was talking about Imam Ali is burying his wife, and he has just buried the Prophet 2 months prior. And he talks about one grief consoling the other grief. I mean, he is deep. So they grieved, they absolutely grieved. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, one of the most heartbreaking things that I've ever read about him is that once he exited Medina and he walked on the outskirts and his servant followed him. This is after the tragedy of Karbala. And he found him with his head on a hard rock, and he was doing tasbih and just crying in isolation and alone. They grieved, And Sayyidah Zainab, you see her moving through the stages of grief. You see the panic as she's sort of sending her brother off, when she says, mahlan, mahla, slow down, don't go yet. Or the horror when she finds out they trampled him, or when she sees him, the anger in the court of Yazid. So she is reflecting those stages of grief, but you have to remember, because she has developed that disposition, and she has practiced riyadha, discipline, attained those sublime moral virtues, she's able to stay rooted in such a profound degree of taqwa and awareness of God being next to her. She can survive without losing, not being able to survive the loss of her brother. So she survives and she thrives. Like Sheikh said, she looked after everyone too. So I guess when you come across statements of the Imams, one, and this will sound counterintuitive, don't immediately just go for what the apparent says. Try to analyze why they have said it. And that's it, yeah.
Ahsan, thank you. I think you hit the nail on the head by saying it's that faith, isn't it? It's that connection to the Almighty, having that faith, having that patience, all that comes into it. Brother Safraz, I'm keen to get your psychological point of view on it when it comes to the Bibi Zainab's famous quote.
Thank you, Sajjad. Just want to start by thanking the Leicester community for inviting me, and just to say it's a pleasure to be on the panel with the brothers and sisters and to be with you all together. This point about the Ahlul Bayt, let me start off with a quick survey if I can. How many of you honestly would be able to raise your hand now to say, yeah, I can easily relate to the Ahlul Bayt? Just raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. Just in whatever sense you've taken it. Yeah. My point here is for us to consider that sometimes the way we've developed a relationship with the Ahlul Bayt is that they're on such a high pedestal. It's like, yeah, I can't do that. They were imams. That was Bibi Zainab. We can't do that. We're like normal people. If Subhanahu wa Ta'ala chose, he could have sent messengers as angels. Why did he choose humans? Because humans are like us. We're all humans. We're all fallible. What made the Ahlul Bayt infallible was the choices, was the development, was the discipline. So much of the submission that we talked about today. And I'm really glad that we've got this opportunity here now to allow ourselves to make the Ahlul Bayt a little bit more relatable. Sister Monzala has just talked about that real grief, picturing Imam Ali with his head on the stone, just waking up because he's been crying. Was he weak to do that? When we're beset with challenges, the stuff going around now with COVID, even before COVID and well after COVID, there'll always be challenges, difficulties in our life. And when we experience those difficulties, they can push us over the edge. We can become incredibly low. We can become incredibly depressed, hopeless, suicidal, really anxious, not wanting to come out of our house. Does this mean that we're weak? These are important questions that actually I'd like to get some of your input on. What we can do is relate to the Ahlul Bayt and see that they went through so many of these challenges. Imam Sajjad, we know, cried for years and years and years. Did that make him weak? There's a lesson for us to learn, is to accept that we've been created, we've been developed with emotions. If Allah just wanted us to have a rational brain, we would have had a rational brain. We'd just have the frontal cortex. Why do we have the limbic system? We're meant to experience emotions. Now, like everything Islam advocates is in balance. That a lack of emotion is devoid of compassion, devoid of humanity. Excessive emotion can also take us away from the balance. And hopefully some of the things that are useful for us to take away from the Ahlul Bayt are strategies that help us achieve a balance. Now, just just picking up on one point among many that we'd like to talk about, but we need to have a balance. We need to hear from you. Is Bibi Zainab saying, "I see beauty in everything." Now, I'm going to link this in a really strange way to the new Audi A7, the S line. Anyone seen it? The black edition. Yeah. Really nice. Now, the thing is, I'm a bit worried. I'm getting a bit paranoid here. Every time I walk down my road to the shops, I see that car. It's parked up, more than one, and someone drives past it. I'm wondering, do Audi know that I want it and they're just winding me up because they know I can't afford it? Why is it I'm noticing this Audi? Is it that Audi are trying to make me jealous? Or is it that I've got a perceptual bias? I'm noticing something that I'm looking for subconsciously. Yeah? And you may be able to relate to this. You know, some of you might have a banger of a phone and you see, ooh, that guy's got the new iPhone 12 Pro. You know, you've got some bag that's falling apart. And you thought, ooh, that Gucci looks nice. And wherever you look, you see that Gucci. You see that iPhone 12. It's that perceptual bias. You're looking out for something that you want. Now, because of the challenges in our life, that can warp our bias so that we start looking and noticing only the things that are negative. We start skipping our blessings. What we learn from Bibi Zainab is, you know what, there's a different way to look at it. We can train ourselves to look out for the blessings. Every day, pick out a new blessing. Something that, you know, all those hadith about if all the seas were ink and all the trees were pens, you still wouldn't be able to enumerate the number of blessings. So I'm just using this as one example, yeah? And I'm not advocating that you go out looking for your Gucci bag and your new iPhone 12, but to be looking out for those blessings that help you balance the impact of some of the challenges in our life can have on our perceptual bias, on the things we notice. And, you know, the things we notice affect how we feel. And that becomes a vicious cycle. So one way to break that and help us relate to the Ahlul Bayt is following their habits and looking for the beauty in everything. Thank you.
Ahsant, thank you very much. So I want to move to Mr. PT. Before I move to the exercise part, let's talk about dietary choices. How important are dietary choices in impacting our health? And I think I also want to ask this question, because I'm only going to get this opportunity once. Oily samosas and mandazis and biryanis, what's your view on this?
Right, so for the part that you've all been waiting for, okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Most of you all know me, and you know that I speak my mind, and all the guys here will have heard me going on at them all the time, complaining about what they eat, what they drink. Unfortunately, we live in a society where we're influenced by so much advertising, and 99% of the advertising is really bad for us. Sheikh's been waiting for this part as well, because he just wants me to tell him that, you know, all the rice and the meat and everything he's eating is good for him. No. He's interested in ghee as well, actually, so if anyone's got ghee, yeah. But no, honestly speaking, I think we live in a society where we're really, really having a problematic time. And if we don't address these issues, I can see it rippling and having an effect on our kids, it having an effect on everyone around us. So we really need to look at what we eat, how we eat, and there's a lot of points that I can, you know, mention to you guys about food and diet, but unfortunately, you know, everybody's palate is different. So I'm not going to sit here telling you guys what to eat, what not to eat. But what I am going to say is that there's one or two most important things that we need to look at and cut out of our diet. One being sugar, right? 100% sugar is a big killer and it's causing obesity. I mean, look at the statistics. Right now, 2020 survey was done and there's 67% of adult males are overweight, and half of that, they're obese, So imagine that, we're talking about a third of the population of this country, men, are obese. And it's almost the same with the women as well. That's a problem. And if we look at how we're going to get our spirituality, then we're not going to be, if our bodies are our vessels and the mind is inside the body and the soul is inside the body, we need to make sure that our bodies are moving efficiently in order for us to be even looking at then spirituality or, good mindset. For me, I personally say that, if the body's good, then everything else falls into place. And if it's not, then you're going to have a problem. And the adults of this community, if you've got kids, you're setting a precedence for your kids. If you're eating unhealthy foods, you're going to be looking at them, and then they're going to be eating those foods, and you might be telling them to do something that you're not doing yourself. So it's either lead by example, or are you telling them, do as I say and not as I do? So diet is so important, because when you're exercising, it's only 10%. 90% is your diet. So if you don't address your diet, there's no point you coming to the gym and talking to me and exercising. And that's the reality of it. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Ahsan, thank you. And I know, hats off to you on your most recent initiative. I think you started training the seniors. So Abbas is holding sessions with the senior citizens and trying to get them into shape. They might start putting us to shame at some point. Sheikh, I was keen to get your thoughts on Islamic point of view regarding keeping fit. Is there anything from an Islamic perspective?
Oh, okay. Just to reiterate, I also want to listen from the sisters and brothers, especially as it's coming up to 12. So I'll be very, very brief. The narration tells us, "Al-mu'min al-qawi ahabbu 'inda Allah min al-mu'min al-dha'if." A believer who is strong is better in the eyes of Allah than a believer who is weak. Now, you may come and dissect this hadith and say this is relation to strength of the heart, but that's going too far. There is no evidence in that hadith that the Prophet is talking about the inner strength. He's talking about fitness. He's talking about a healthy body. Because we have examples in the Quran where Allah praises those people who are healthy. The Quran does. So today in Jum'ah, I talked about the example of this man by the name of Talut. Allah says, وَزَادَهُ بَسْطَةً بِالْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ. Allah made him healthy and fit. And therefore he was chosen as the king for Bani Israel. Musa alayhi salam was praised for having strength. Why did the wife of Musa choose him? Let's ask. Two things he had. She said, these two I like in him. What were the two things, according to the Quran, that the wife of Musa saw in Musa and therefore selected him as her husband? Any ideas? Huh? Trustworthiness. Okay, so that is one, because Al-Amin is mentioned in the Quran. He is trustworthy, an individual who wouldn't betray, an individual you can truly trust. Second, exactly. Musa alayhi salam had a 7-pack. What? 6-pack. Okay, so he was qawi. Al-Qawiyul Amin. The Quran says, Maulana, Musa was a prophet, close to Allah. All these qualities are immense, absolutely brilliant. But the wife of Musa and Prophet Shu'aib, who chose him, said these two. And if they had said things that Allah wasn't happy with, He wouldn't place them in the Quran. So the recognition is, this body of ours is not ours. Anyone here who thinks that this body is yours is mistaken. If you abuse your body by not looking after it as far as the diet or exercise is concerned, then you are abusing the creation of Allah. And therefore, subsequently, there will be hisab and kitab. There will be accountability. So, it is a trust given to us by the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala, amana given to us. And sometimes we wonder when Amir al-Mu'mineen eats either salt or just bread and say, oh, this is, zuhud and asceticism and, whatever. Amir al-Mu'mineen once was walking past the street and somebody said to him, Ya Ali, I'm going to give you meat. You don't need to pay me now. Pay me another time. Imam is interested in meat today. Yes? You want to give it to me, but I'm not interested. I'm not for it. Yes? He had self-control. And I think this is, going on with what Abbas was saying. I feel today we are bombarded and we are under immense pressure, to keep up appearances and to have, adding on to what Dr. Safraz mentioned, there's a lot of factors affecting our mind and our body and subsequently our soul. I believe the I obsession, I call it the I obsession because everybody wants to have things, and when they don't have things, they become depressed when they can't have things that others have. And secondly, very importantly, we see people, figures, I need to keep up this appearance, I need to be this, and then we start to somehow wanting to mimic certain individuals or whatever, not because of our health, but because we want to somehow, look at certain celebrities or sports people or whatever. And the third area that I would add, that I'm dedicating an entire majlis for tomorrow, is the debilitating, absolutely devastating impact of social media, the issue of attention. Everybody wants attention from others. Nice one. Okay, so that is also a concern that we have, that we need to address as well.
Ahsan, thank you. So again, if there's any questions for online viewers, you can message 07958 450 191. I'm going to pass it over to the floor now. Any questions on the floor? We have one there. Is there someone with a mic?
But maybe ladies first, otherwise they say Islam oppresses.
Yeah, that's true actually. Anyone in the... Hold that. Anyone in the ladies first, as we're told.
Assalamu alaikum. I just want to add to Abbas' comment because I myself am very conscious about the food which I eat according to my age. But I realized on that only that in the past what I did was something wrong, and effectively it had a big impact on me. And I think the major cause of our Muslim people are eating a lot of meat. And when you eat a lot of meat, you become very aggressive. And I think, Sheikh Ili, I think you'll agree with me that there's a saying of our imams, they're eating too much to fill up your stomach until your brain tells you on that one they had enough. That is doing zulm on your nafs. And that is something, a disease which we have in the community. And I think our Leicester Jamaat and so forth, the other rest of the Jamaats, the biryani seems to be the core of that. Every time you don't have meat on that one, you can see the faces of people. Today we have not enjoyed a good meal today. And outside of that is a lot of takeaways there, and it's all chili food, and it's all junk food. And children here on that, they are being bombarded by these sweet things, which in the shops, it's an attraction, and the government is actually not doing anything about the obesity and the level of people are falling into sick. So how to overcome this sickness, I think as individual on that one, for the parents to actually take into command and say on that, that you need to change. But if the parents are within the family and the children, then I don't know where you would draw the line. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, the hadith says, do not make your stomachs a cemetery for the animals. Number one. Number two, statistics show UK Muslim population is 2%. They eat 10% of the meat of this country. Number three, hadith after hadith says, one of the causes for the sickness and the hardening of the heart, qaswatul qalb, which the Quran speaks about, when the heart does not become receptive to Allah's message, when we do not cry and we do not shed the tears, when we become hard-hearted, is overconsumption of meat. That's what I'm, just to support. However, I'm of the school of thought that believes in moderation. I think it's the excessive element. And yes, may Allah help our sisters and give them support and strength on the day that they tell their husbands it's vegetarian day. Because I have seen a biryani without meat cause controversy in North America. Do we have time to tell you the story? Okay, one nikah ceremony in North America decided that vegetarian biryani. I had people ask me, can we add things to Ziyarat Ashura La'na? Okay, so that's the problem we face. And those cooks in our centers and whatever, they're suffering. Abbas knows, we've had this discussion the last few nights. I'm not a very good supporter of oily food, ghee, and so on. I feel we have a problem in our communities. It's not the fault of the management or the presidents or the cooks. It's the fault of the people. Because they say, if we don't have this type of food where we can see the layer, beautiful layer of ghee, but I've been told that it's good for you. Anyway, we don't want to take this into that discussion. I don't feel it's good for you. I can't prove it with a hadith, unfortunately. But it's still, I don't think we're conscious enough in our diets, in our centers. What we give out and what we eat, we need a new way of approach and a new change of our mindset and education of our youngsters, as well as, of course, looking after the environment and plastics. That's another thing, but that's another story.
Can I just do a quick poll here? Maybe that will get us interactive a bit. Hands up if you would have an objection to vegetable biryani at the next Khushali. 1, 2, 3. Objection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What if you had option 50% vegetable biryani? Actually, then you'll run out of the chicken biryani. Okay, so maybe not. We're not quite ready yet.
Majority were okay.
The majority were okay. You saw that.
I don't know, the ladies, they were.
They're saying that now.
They're saying that now.
Bring the vegetable biryani.
People who are okay are not coming. The people who are not okay are going.
Ah.
Yeah, because they want mind, body, and soul. The others are not here. They want the biryani.
More questions, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Sheikh, I've found out not too long ago when reading the late Imam Ayatollah Khomeini's background as he was growing up, and he was apparently a very good runner. He was a very fast runner. Any other Maraja you can think of got a sporting background? And secondly, sorry, my second fold to the question was, is there an Islamic form of self-defense?
As far as Maraja, I can't remember any of the Maraja playing for Leicester City. That is struggle to find. But you know, with the Maraja, a lot of them, they would have routines. So they would walk continuously. They would, you know, not leave this very rigid lifestyle. They would be moving. And that's why you see them 80s and the 90s, mashallah, they don't suffer from dementia and Alzheimer's. It doesn't mean that, you know, that is the only way to avoid it, but certainly they are health conscious in that regard. Your second question was regarding yes, wrestling is the narrations that we find. Wrestling, we have a narration, Imam Hassan and Imam Husayn alayhi salam used to wrestle a lot, and the Prophet used to say, teach your children 3 sports. Let's ask, because we need interactive. Horse riding,
archery and swimming.
Presidents aren't allowed to speak. Let's give the ladies. Anyway, they've heard it. So these 3, but then someone asks, well, what about the other sports? Are we allowed? The Prophet says archery, swimming, and horse riding. How many here do these 3 sports? MashaAllah. Horse riding? Only swimming? So you're doing a third of what the Prophet said. Anyone here doing exactly what the Prophet said? You've done all 3 back when you were 50 years ago? Huh? On a regular basis? On a regular basis, only 1. No. Who does all three on a regular basis? Prophet is saying, we don't follow Prophet. See, the Prophet said that time. Those were prevalent that time. He's saying be physically active because swimming was necessary, archery was necessary in war, and so was horse riding. Doesn't mean that today we have to stick to these three. It was a very contextual thing. Yes, wrestling. It is said that Imam Hassan, Imam Husayn used to wrestle. The Prophet one day saw them wrestle, and he was next to Sayyidah Fatima. So he said to Imam al-Hassan, "You can do it. You can beat your brother." According to Bihar al-Anwar Shaykh al-Majlisi, Sayyidah Fatima asked the Prophet, "How is it that you're not supporting Husayn?" He said, "Because I can see Jibreel next to me saying, 'Oh Husayn, you can do it.'" Yeah, so that wrestling, have to throw in a fadila as well. All right, so that's wrestling, but that, again, it's confined to that time that was quite prevalent. But any form of, but it mustn't involve excessive self-harm. There may be in the future a fatwa by our maraja that may prohibit, and I've seen work, may prohibit boxing. Boxing could potentially become haram in the future because if it's proven to cause damage, excessive damage to the brain and all the other conditions, then it may become haram, and Allah knows best.
Sure.
Just to add to Sheikh's point, the other thing, the reason why our maraji are so sharp, even in their older sort of age, is because they engage in a lot of intellectual sort of problem solving and critiquing. So the entire discipline of usul al-fiqh and what they do into their 90s, they're kind of using logic and other intellectual sciences into their old age. And that's thought to be protective from things like dementia, Alzheimer's as well. So training the mind with a lot of, I guess, puzzles or whatever, keeping the mind sprightly is also really important.
Perfect. Any other questions from the ladies? Questions? Nothing? Is there anything on there?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've just received a few text message questions. The first one is for Brother Abbas. Is sweetener a suitable replacement for sugar?
Ali.
Well, so from what I've read, sweetener is just as bad. You may say that it's like similar to like Coke or Diet Coke, but Diet Coke is just as bad as Coke. So both are just as bad, and unfortunately, if you're going to be using sweeteners, there's some studies that have been shown to say that it actually causes cancer as well. So, I mean, that I don't know 100%, but yeah, it's no much more better.
And we have another question for Brother Safraz. Depression and anxiety cases are on the rise, especially in our youths today. What can we do as a community to help our youths deal with these challenges?
Thanks for the important question. I think it is worth noting that sometimes when you come across a new concept, then everyone's got it. And everyone's feeling depressed and everyone's anxious, and these are normal, natural emotions. Yeah, so we don't want to pathologize and say just because you're feeling a little bit down or just because you're you're feeling a bit tense that you've got an anxiety disorder. It's when these things become excessive, and when the person really doesn't want to be there. They don't want to experience that excessive emotion. What can the community do was the question, and I think this is another kind of link back to our theme of Bibi Zainab and Imam Sajjad, is that they traveled, they were part of a community, a group of companions and family who understood each other, who never judged each other. Now, I'm not that familiar with the Leicester Jamaat, but let's focus on the Leicester Jamaat. If you were feeling really rough, how much would you be able to say, yeah, I'm feeling really down? If you feel comfortable saying that, then fantastic. That is a measure of a community that's ready to listen to you, that's not going to judge you, and that's going to back you. Yeah, that doesn't mean to say that everyone should just become like a peplo. Like everyone should just be like, okay, no, you got problems, we should just leave them. No, it's about being compassionate. Rather than kicking someone's ass, to help them. What was your kit? What was it? Keep it together. Rather than kicking someone's ass to keep it together, maybe we can support them to build up gradually with compassion. So I think on a community level, there's something massive about being non-judgmental, about being supportive. You know, we're on the third, fourth, fifth night of Muharram. Yeah, is there someone that you would normally expect to be here that hasn't been here? What's your responsibility as a community member? This is some of that preemptive work we can do. People suffer in silence. Yeah, people are afraid to talk about how difficult things are for them. Sheikh, you can correct me about a hadith of the fourth Imam about why don't you rise up? Because there's not enough real followers. The ummah, the community isn't strong enough. I'm paraphrasing. Sixth Imam. Yeah. You're supposed to be able to put your hand into your friend's pocket without him being bothered. Yeah, that's on the next level. You've got to be able to open up and confide. You don't have to go into all the depths of your issues, but you've got to feel comfortable enough. And so we want to create that environment for our children where they can feel comfortable enough telling us that things aren't right for them. We don't want to jump into pathologizing them and say, you need to take medication and a therapist. We just need to be able to listen to them. We need to give them some support, encouragement, remind them of what's good about them, remind them of their strengths and their blessings, and build them up gradually. There's many more things we can talk about, but hopefully not being judgmental and being compassionate as a community can make a huge difference.
Just a consequential question on that then, Brother Safras, and thanks for everybody on the panel for coming tonight to enlighten us. So you said the community. When you say community, is it like a specific counsellor? Because I guess there's a lot of skills and experience required around this. If all of us become counsellors overnight, the problem with that is we may confuse the direction and the process.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Me and Abbas, we're just talking outside over chai, and he's like, "Oh, psychologist," and I get that a lot. People are like, "Oh, psychologist, are you reading my mind or something?" So no, I'll only do that if you pay me to do that. Yeah, we're all psychologists. I'm just a little bit more trained and I develop expertise in particular mental health problems. But everyone doesn't need to be a counsellor. If I can do a cheeky plug, Co-Edge, I think the week after next, and I'll send it to Samir so you can put it on your Leicester website, are running a mental health first aid course. I think Sheikh referenced that in the lecture. That equips everyone just to be able to notice what are some of the key signs and what are some of those initial interventions that anyone can do without having to be a specialist. So, as well as being able to tell the difference between whether you should be taking a sweetener or sugar, you don't need to be a doctor or a dietitian to do that. Common sense. There's a lot of that common sense to do with mental health as well that we can all develop. There are, of course, specialisms. And the great thing is we're living in a country where you can refer to your GP who's got the expertise to be able to point you in the right direction. Yeah, we don't all need Muslim counselors. Yeah, I get referrals every week saying, need a Muslim therapist. What's the problem? You understand the problem? You don't need a Muslim therapist. You just need someone with a specialism in the difficulty you've got. Admittedly, there are experiences that people have in, like the NHS, not just in mental health, in physical health, where people don't respect your culture. But these are the minority. The vast majority, people have training. They're culturally adaptive. They're sensitive. There may be some issues where you can benefit from extra spiritual consultation, and you're speaking to your sheikh, your alim, who can work in conjunction with other Muslim therapists they know, is a resource I think we can definitely be developing. So in response to your question, Samir, the whole community can become more compassionate and empathic. We can all take on that natural psychologist role within us, and when things get heavier, then we can step them up using local services, and I think we can develop some more capacity within our resident alims and within other professionals within the community. One's like, I know you're a previous doctor, right? By training, anything you'd add to that?
I was trying to be a pathologist, so that's not very relevant. I'd cut up bodies, so that's not very relevant. But I do have something to add to your wonderful point. You have to ask why the youth are expressing anxiety and depression, and if it's faith-related. So Maryam Namazi, who's the president of the ex-Muslims, I can't remember what the name is now, it's a council of ex-Muslims. She said there is a pandemic of atheism sweeping the Muslim community, and tsunami, sorry, she called it, something like that. And nobody's aware, or they're not doing anything about it. Suppressed atheism, asking questions about faith, not dealing with them, that's a real problem. And that means that the root of that obviously is Islamic education probably needs some form of reform. And you need to cater for people over the age of 16 into their 90s if you want. So that's a project I'm involved with, Islamic case-based learning. And it's inspired by problem-based learning, which I did at University of Manchester. So we write Islamic cases which are filled with psychological themes and aqaid themes, fiqh, and so on and so forth. And we have groups, and it's open. So we have had 13-year-olds who are quite mature, including 14, 50-year-olds, men and women. And it allows a kind of cross-generational, cross-gender, across neglected demographics, a kind of conversation about faith, difficult topics, about why do you believe in God, how would you go about proving it? You know, I don't feel like he exists, or suffering, or whatever. And these sessions, they're done with a facilitator. Ultimately, what would be amazing is if our scholars had circles like that, and it works when it's small groups, actually, then you're able to open up. But sort of case-based learning, scenario-based learning, where you touch on difficult topics and people are able to open up. The other aspect, which is the mentoring aspect, I think is so essential. One of the cohorts that I'm involved with is a women's group, and they're all, some of them are housewives, and they wanted a women's-only group for ICBL. They didn't want the gents there. And their concern is mostly ethical and moral, and how to teach the kids. And so we almost end up having a counselling session every Monday morning about how, and we reflect, and we had a reflection session prior to Muharram. And I didn't know one of the ladies, she was going through a bit of a tough time, and she opened up, and for her, it was very transformative. So you need a system of education that has a mentoring, counselling aspect built in, a critical analysis aspect built in, supplemented with lectures because they have their place. A case-based learning is not a standalone, it always needs to be supplemented. And finally, a kind of like a community action thing. And then I think youth will feel enough freedom perhaps to express what they feel. Times are changing so fast, you know. I had a Nokia 63, I don't know what it's called. It was a brick. It was a computer. And my 4-year-old can swipe his fingers up. He knows the password on the iPad. And so time's moving way too fast. And they're thinking faster, moving faster. But that is giving them also, I think, a set of new skills. I don't always look down on technology. I think you have to harness it for the correct purposes. So yeah, absolutely. I think if you have a community that it has a very empathic kind of role where you embrace people who are going through genuine difficulty, and then you open up critical discussions. That's so important, because if you don't do it here, they'll happen in universities up and down the country. A couple of years ago, and it's going on now, there was a bit of a endemic of a lot of Muslim women taking their scarves off. And that is a direct rejection of symbols of faith, because for them, they feel like religion has become ritualistic, and Islamic education is just about, here's your mutahirat, here's your najasat, you're going to go to hell. And then that's why they switch off when they're 15, 16, and they don't want to come to madrasa anymore. But if you introduce people to the beauty and the essence and the many different facets of Islam, the spiritual, the mystical, the philosophical even, they will love it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sister. I think, Sajjad, just one point, it's really good to get that information that you've given, and it just shows that how much a community needs to do, right, to ensure that we do things in line with 2021. So appreciate your comments. Thanks very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Just a quick question. I've heard what we should be doing, quite interesting points right across the panel, but the bit that I've not quite heard is the how. And so if I could just flip probably an individual question across the panelists, if that's okay. Abbas, in terms of sugar, I think we all know that sugar's bad and it's the kind of the 21st century drug. But quite often, a lot of people, they know they should be abstaining from sugar, but a lot of people have an emotional attachment to food, and so they've had a really bad day or they've got really stressed. Quite often they'll attach a comfort food to that emotion. So it isn't quite as straightforward as saying just stop all sugar. And maybe Safraz, the same sort of question to you. How does somebody try and unpick that emotional attachment to wrong food groups? Sister, sorry, I didn't quite catch your name, but you were talking about Bibi Zainab, and in terms of self-reflection. If someone, particularly looking on the mental illness, is in a suffering a little bit, and it could be at any age, not just the young, but it could be any age, they might not know how to self-reflect or where they should be or where they should aspire to be. So whether you've just got a few words on how they can actually do that, and Sheikh Hilly, just so you don't feel left out. I was just going to say, in terms of somebody that perhaps needs to build knowledge, improve the soul, connection to God, don't know where to start, it seems very daunting, perhaps they're in a low place themselves. Any ideas on how they could actually change that around and where they should start going and how they could do that? Thanks.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Husayn. Yeah, so with regards to your question to me, with the sugar side of things, I mean, the question was posed to me about dietary choices. So just one point that I wanted to make, if I wanted to emphasize one of the most important aspects of your diet, which is to cut out sugar as best you can. But moving forward from that, if you're saying that you want to know a practical way of trying to actually find a solution to choosing the right foods, is exercising. Because as soon as you exercise, you realize the benefit of your exercise, and then your mindset is more focused towards, oh, well, I've exercised now. Now, am I going to go and spoil that by eating something sugary? And slowly, because as humans, we're habitual people. We create habits, and those habits are created over long term. They don't just come overnight, right? So in the same way, to break a habit is not going to be straightforward as well. So likewise, you want to create new habits, you've got to make it consistent. You've got to do something regularly. You've got to exercise regularly. You've got to make it part and parcel of your daily life, just like how we make salah a part and parcel of our daily life. We want to instill that kind of mindset within us that says, right, did I pray my Fajr? Did I pray Zohar, Asr, Maghrib, Isha? Yes. Okay, did I exercise today? Did I eat today? Right? So certain things that we do them subconsciously without even thinking about it, right? Because it's been instilled in us that we do this. But when it comes to exercise, people like to shy away. They want to run away from that because they don't want to experience that kind of discomfort. And it's only after you've gotten through that initial stage of discomfort that you then start to appreciate what it is you're doing to your body. Not only from the positive aspect of exercising, but also from the negative aspect of what you do in the kitchen. Because if you spend 3 hours with me in the gym, I'll kill you for 3 hours, but then there's another 165 hours left in the week that you're not with me. So you're accountable to yourself. You're accountable to me when I'm training you, but then you're accountable to yourself when you're making your choices for what you want to eat and what you want to feed your family members. And if you exercise, that mindset is going to be a lot more focused in what you're eating and what you don't want to eat. So that's probably the best thing that I can say to you. Everybody needs to exercise, because if you don't, your body atrophies. Your muscles waste away. As you get older, every decade that goes through your life, right, you just lose muscle tissue. And before you know it, you're a 60, 70-year-old man. And, you know, no disrespect to the elderlies that I'm training right now. They're great people. They're doing so much, and they're appreciating what they're doing right now. And it's something that's not been given to them ever. So, you know, big pat on the back for Sam, because he's the one that's initiated that, and he said, right, you know, these guys want to do something, and they're doing something, and they're coming back to me after a week and telling me, wow, you know, we did certain things that you told us to do, and we're already seeing the benefit of it. So imagine if 60, 70, even older than that, guys can feel that benefit. What's our excuse at 30, 40, or 20 even?
Perfect, thanks. If I can just, Safraz, you've got a question. If we can restrict it to 2.5 minutes, there's about 7 or 8 other questions online apparently.
Sure. Thanks, Husayn, for helping make this a bit more concrete. So make it real quick. I'll invite you, anyone who's got a smartphone, pull out your phone right now and take this first concrete step. You know, we talked about looking for the beauty in everything. Start by opening your notes, titling your first notes as blessings, and then just write down your first blessing. And see if maybe, you know, a consistent time in the day if possible, if not, just whenever you remember, one more blessing. I'm not giving up the mic until I see some phones out.
Brother Safraz, just a question on that. What type of blessings? Can you define that a little bit? Materialistic?
What are you feeling blessed with right now, Samir?
X5.
X5. There you go. There's a start. It can be anything, you know.
Alhamdulillah.
Hopefully there's a start point. You know, you're on one there, and then you know you build it up. Yeah, there is no limit. Yeah, the only limit is the memory on your phone.
So first, shall we take it around the floor, see who's willing to?
If anyone wants to share, yeah, you know what? I need to hear from the sisters before I leave here. One share from the sisters, a blessing, please. Health. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Family. Beautiful. Anything else? Imam Husayn. Yeah. Incredible start there. Yeah. So inshallah, something we can build on. Last point about concrete action before we move on is try and buddy up with someone and take small steps. Yeah. In terms of kind of, you know, building it up, momentum is everything. Crash and burn. You know, I was telling Abbas, I'm really good at crashing and burning. Small steps, sustainability.
If I pass over to Sister Munzada for the answer to you.
Thank you. So there's a really nice book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which builds on this idea that's just mentioned about taking small steps. In terms of reflection and how to do it practically, I would say initially join it with Salah. That is already a period of reflection and contemplation you are engaging in, and limit it to 1 to 2 minutes perhaps. If you are a writer, write it down, but keep that safe somewhere where nobody can read it. Put a spreadsheet on or whatever, but just recount the events of your day, and that's it. Good, bad, the ugly, everything in a short, if you like writing more, write more detail or less. And just do that for a sustained period of time, and then reflect back on what you found, and then increase your time slowly, and try to start making small changes to each of those things.
Ahsan, thank you. I don't think we're going to get time for all 7. Do you want to select? Yeah, okay, let's do that. Oh, sorry, yes, there was a question, yes.
Okay, I mean, I'll just very quickly. I'm feeling now similar to what Muslim ibn Aqil felt. Especially on the brother's side, because there's a few gaps emerging. He turned around and saw majority disappear. Peace be upon Muslim ibn Aqil. Many times in our lives, sometimes we go through this. MashaAllah, the sister's staying loyal. And doesn't mean the brothers are not loyal. But Dr. Safra was saying that maybe we need to set a cutoff point so that people know. Otherwise, they think, we may be continuing till tomorrow's majlis, by which point definitely we'll all feel like Muslim ibn Aqil. So we do need to understand a cutoff point. This question, Brother Husayn, is a question that requires several hours. And I think it's an amazing question in the sense that it is for most of us. I am very, very passionate about one thing, and that is willpower. Because if you have willpower, you can stay away from sugar, you can start to build up your mind, you could stay away from ghee, you could stay... I don't know why. Anyway, so... I think willpower, development, understanding, research, appreciating self-control. Why is it that we do what we do? All these different tools out there, books, TED Talks, lectures, things like that. Shahr Ramadan is about willpower, other times of the year, willpower. The problem is when we wake up in the morning and we have lack of desire to do anything, we feel low, we don't know where to start. We just don't have any, number one, purpose. Let's ask ourselves, what is the purpose? What am I here for? What am I supposed to achieve? What is it that I need to get to? Yes? Secondly, if I identify a purpose, aim, objectives, goals in my life, then if I'm able to work towards it by having a number of key factors, how do I get there? But remember, we have experts here in mental health. We have experts here in fitness. I think that many of us struggle when it comes to idea of going to people who may be learned in religion and saying, help me. Except if I have a question about black magic, or I think, istikhara. Maulana this, Maulana that. But people don't usually come to Maulanas and say, you know what? Tell me what's wrong with me. Shake me. Change my life. Give me something. Yeah? I don't get that often. I'm waiting for this avalanche now. I've asked for it. But the reality is that we have illnesses, right? We have symptoms, we go to doctors, we go to mental health specialists. Why don't we go to people to help ourselves? How many times you've been to ziyarats on trips and you looked at people in your own room and said to them, by the way, we've come to 2 weeks, you've been together. Can you tell me what's wrong with me? If you've had a lot of fights with them, God help you. But if they turn around to you and say, you know what, that one thing you did, that will help you. We have a hadith that says, a believer is the mirror. We love to recite this hadith, but we never practice it. When was the last time you asked someone that you know, tell me things that you think I should change in my life? And you should then be ready with thick skin for that person to tell you, by the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And not turn around and say, stop having a go at me, or you use this opportunity to criticize me. No, be ready. Imam al-Sadiq, Rahimallah imra'an ahda ilayya huyubi. Peace be upon the person who gifts me my mistakes. That's the only way for us to progress. Otherwise we stagnate and not develop.
Ahsan, thank you. So I think let's try and wrap it up with maybe two questions. Two quick questions.
Are there any books that Sister Munzila and Sheikh would recommend for someone who wants to start reading about Islamic theology, history, and spirituality?
Can I think about that for a second?
Yeah, think about it, yeah.
I don't think that's fair. Okay. You see, that question is interesting. People often ask me, can you recommend me a book about Islam? I say to them, imagine you go and you just enter a Waterstones and you say, excuse me, can you recommend me a book? They're like, hello? This is, what do you mean I recommend the book? So the first thing I always tell people who ask that question is, do you really know what you want to read about? Because a lot of the times people say, give me something about spirituality. People send me something that will raise me to high levels. Give me this. We fail to identify areas of weakness in our understanding and knowledge. That again comes through consultation, discussion, dialogue, asking. Yes, most of us have vacuums in our understanding, and we have to go through our, knowledge and try to dig into it. So if you say to me, for example, I want to improve my aqidah. I say, okay, which level are you? If you want Islamic theology, I can't just throw in any book out there. For example, Theological Instructions by Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi. Yes? Now this book, we teach it the Hausa, but it's quite complicated. So it may not be for everyone. It's available in English, right? Or if you want a slightly simpler one, there is a book called Islamic Belief System by Sheikh Shumali. Now, Islamic belief system is accompanied by about maybe, 40 lectures he's given on YouTube about the book. So you can read the book and watch his lectures. Yes? So that is at least for the elementary or those who are. So that's the thing. History also. Which areas of history? Are you looking at prophets? Are you looking at imams? Are you looking at Abbasids? Are you looking at Umayyads? Are you looking at minor occultation, post-major? So these kind of things, we need to identify exactly, specifically areas, and we can, inshallah, recommend. Similarly, spirituality is such a huge topic. I mean, where do you start? There are a number of areas that perhaps we can talk about.
Ahsant. Sister Musa, any book recommendations?
One of the first books I read was Self-Development by Sheikh Shumali. So that's definitely one I would remember. I remember it having quite a significant impact on me, and I read it again later. And then I guess if you want to know about history, I mean, Sheikh's absolutely right. You can't have a book which has anatomy, physiology, immunology all in one. Shi'i Islam by Allama Tabatabai is a nice one. It encompasses a lot of about the development of Shi'i Islam and history and things like that. But Self-Development is a wonderful book. And Sheikh Shumali has a virtual library of every topic that you would want to ever know about. So he would be a good shout on YouTube here.
Ahsan, thank you. We'll move to the last question.
I think this question is for both Sheikh and Brother Safraz. How do you balance tawakkul and mental health? Sometimes a person may make themselves believe they are having tawakkul, but in reality may have deteriorating mental health which they may not realize.
I've got to be honest, I'm not sure I entirely understood the question. I can try and answer it based on what I've understood, and maybe you can top up, Sheikh. Your conviction, your reliance on Allah is something that can waver depending on your mental state. When you're demotivated, when you're distant from your goal, and what Sheikh talked about in terms of purpose. Why am I even on this earth? Why am I alive? When you lose connection with that, your reliance on Allah can waver. And I think one reaction to that can be to just beat yourself up, say I'm a terrible Muslim. Another can be compassion, and I think taking gentler steps, trying to reconnect with being present, as Sister Munzila pointed out, in the moment, rather than getting caught up in the cycles of the past, can be one way of reconnecting with the present, reconnecting with your Creator. But first, allowing yourself to accept that my iman will waver. And I, again, Sheikh, maybe correct me about a hadith from Imam Ali that talks about how iman can fluctuate.
Very, very briefly, we have a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen that says, if you are feeling low, stick to wajib. But if you feel high in the sense of close to Allah, do mustahab. Unfortunately, sometimes we read books about Ayatollah Bahjat, Irfan, mysticism, and all of a sudden we feel like, I want to get there. I remember I took a group to Iran for ziyarah, and everyone was telling me, can you show us books about Irfan? They thought, I pick up a book and it says Irfan, and I read it, and all of a sudden I become an arif close to Allah, There are a few arifs there as well sitting. So the point here is this, that is, you see, Imam Ali alayhi salam says that you need to begin to have a discovery of yourself in a sense of your weaknesses and your strength. Here, the question is, as far as I've understood it, is sometimes because you're saying, let me be patient, let me depend on Allah, let me rely on Allah, you begin to exhibit mental health symptoms of mental health disorder. So you become depressed, you become anxious, you become a recluse, you go and just isolate yourself and don't want to see anyone in the world. And this is where it's very, very important to link what was said earlier, and that is we have others who are looking out, others who are supporting, others who are helping. Because sometimes, yes, we may go into our own cocoon and don't realize we're going through difficulties. So we need help. We may be misunderstanding some Islamic concepts as well. We may think it's okay not to cry. You know, sometimes when you lose a loved one, we are told sometimes don't cry. It's not a good idea to cry. Whereas there is nothing wrong to shed a tear. What is wrong is to tear clothes and to, scratch yourself and to go lose it, because that is not allowed in the religion for people that pass away. But shedding the tears and crying is a normal process of accepting this reality and dealing with it and closure. So we need help and support. We need to have bubbles. Friends need to look out for each other. If somebody has misunderstood some Islamic concepts in this regard, they need to have immediately alarm bells. They need to advise them in the best possible way.
Ahsan, thanks, Sheikh. Pass you over to Samir. You want to say a few words, yeah?
Yeah, first and foremost, the idea for today was to start getting people to think about some of the important objectives that I have for the community, the mind, body, and soul, right? And that's the direction, the vision. And, it's been appreciate everybody joining the panel, first of all. I think it's been an amazing panel. Sister Munzila, thank you, Sajjad, for hosting it. Sheikh Hilli, of course, spiritually, Brother Safraz, and of course our own Brother Russ. Really appreciate it. I think there's a lot to do. Some of the things that I take back from everybody in terms of Sister Munzila on controlling ourselves in good times as well as bad times. I think that's really good, to ensure that you are capable, whatever the situation is. From a Sheikh Hilli perspective, having a holistic spiritual view, ensuring that you continue to nurture that part. Community-wise, being together, signposts, all of that stuff. And Brother Abbas, inshallah, going forward, will continue to utilize you to make the community more healthy from a health perspective, from a exercise, strength perspective. So appreciate that. Just to thank you for everybody for attending this as well. And thanks to the panel. Really appreciate it. And inshallah, over the next 18, 24 months, we'll continue to make the community grow. And hopefully this is giving an idea of, giving that awareness and education to the people that we need to do this together to ensure that we meet the objectives and the targets. So, Jazakallah.
Ahsan, thanks to the floor as well. Thanks for questions. Thanks for all the comments. Let's finish with a salawat.